Stop scrolling. Before you spend that old half-dollar, check it. That 50-cent coin could be worth hundreds, thousands, or even more than $1 million. Today we're counting down 4 incredible American half-dollars that collectors have paid serious money to own. And number 1 is absolutely shocking. Coin number 1, the 1993 D half-dollar with the D mint mark and a circulated appearance. At first glance, this coin might look like an ordinary piece of modern American currency, but there are many details that make it worth examining carefully. The date, mint mark, condition, color, surfaces, design, and any unusual characteristics can all tell us more about the coin. So if you have a 1993 D half-dollar sitting in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or box, don't rush to dismiss it. Take a closer look, because every coin has a story. The 1993 D half-dollar belongs to the Kennedy half-dollar series, one of the most recognizable modern coin series in the United States. The Kennedy half-dollar was first introduced in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his assassination in 1963. The coin quickly became one of the most famous American denominations, and the Kennedy design remained on the half-dollar for decades. By 1993, this iconic coin had already been part of American numismatic history for almost 30 years. The first detail you should check on this coin is the date. Make sure the numbers clearly read 1993. On a circulated example, the date may have some light wear, contact marks, or surface scratches, but it should remain easy to identify. Once you confirm the year, look for the small D mint mark on the obverse. The D indicates that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. For collectors, the combination of the 1993 date and D mint mark is important because it identifies the exact issue and helps place the coin correctly in a Kennedy half-dollar collection. Now let's talk about the circulated condition of this 1993 D half-dollar. A circulated coin has spent time in everyday use or has been handled and stored in ways that leave evidence on its surfaces. You may notice small scratches, contact marks, dull areas, or wear on the highest parts of the design. Kennedy's hair and facial features may show some softness, while the reverse eagle can also display wear. Circulation does not automatically make a coin worthless. In fact, understanding circulated condition is an important part of becoming a better collector. The color of a circulated half-dollar can also be quite interesting. Depending on its composition, storage environment, and years of handling, your 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar may have a gray, silver-like, darker, or slightly toned appearance. Some coins can develop natural coloration over time, while others may show discoloration from environmental exposure. But remember that unusual color alone does not prove that a coin is rare. Always examine the entire coin rather than judging its value simply by how dark, bright, or unusual it looks. One of the most important things to remember when examining an older-looking coin is never to clean it simply because you think it looks dirty. Scrubbing, polishing, or using chemicals can permanently alter the original surfaces. A coin that looks dull because of natural circulation or storage may actually be more desirable in its original condition than one that has been aggressively cleaned. If your 1993 D half-dollar has an interesting appearance, preserve it exactly as you found it and investigate before making any changes. Now take a close look at the obverse of the coin. John F. Kennedy's portrait is the central feature, and you should carefully examine his hair, forehead, cheek, neck, and the surrounding lettering. Look at the date and the D mint mark as well. Since this example is circulated, expect some contact marks and wear. However, the major design elements should remain recognizable. Good lighting and a magnifying glass can help reveal details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Next, turn the coin over and examine the reverse. The Kennedy half-dollar features the presidential seal, including an eagle surrounded by stars and inscriptions. Take your time and inspect the eagle's feathers, shield, arrows, lettering, and rim. Look for areas of wear and contact marks, but also check whether anything appears genuinely unusual. A circulated coin can accumulate many strange-looking marks during its lifetime, so careful examination is necessary before deciding that something is an error. The 1993 D half-dollar is particularly interesting because it comes from a period when half-dollars were becoming less common in everyday transactions. Although the denomination remained official U.S. currency, many Americans rarely encountered half-dollars in normal pocket change. This limited everyday use is part of what makes Kennedy half dollars interesting to collectors today. Many people encounter them through bank rolls, collections, special releases, or inherited coin holdings rather than ordinary purchases. The D Mint mark also gives this coin an important connection to the Denver Mint. Denver has played a major role in United States coin production for generations, producing enormous quantities of circulating coins. Collectors often build complete Kennedy half-dollar collections by date and mint mark, so identifying the D correctly is important. Don't confuse a damaged area or unusual surface mark with the actual mint mark. Examine the small letter carefully under magnification if necessary. Another exciting part of examining a 1993 D half-dollar is searching for possible mint errors and varieties. During the production of millions of coins, unusual mistakes can occasionally happen. Collectors may look for significant off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die breaks, doubled design elements, broad strikes, and other recognized mint-made characteristics. If your coin looks different from a normal example, don't immediately assume you've discovered a rare error. Research the feature carefully and determine whether it could have happened during the minting process. This distinction between mint errors and post-mint damage is extremely important. A scratch across Kennedy's portrait is generally damage. A deep dent on the rim could have happened after the coin left the mint. A flattened design element might simply be the result of contact with another object. Even unusual dark spots may be caused by environmental exposure. These features can look dramatic, but a dramatic appearance does not automatically mean high value. A genuine mint error must be evaluated based on how and when the feature was created. You should also inspect the edge of your 1993 D half-dollar. Carefully look around the entire circumference for anything unusual, such as major damage, an unusual shape, or characteristics that appear inconsistent with a normal coin. The edge can sometimes provide useful information when investigating suspected errors, but never cut, scratch, drill, or otherwise damage the coin. If you believe something is unusual, preserve the coin and have it examined properly rather than performing destructive tests. When discussing value, it's very important to keep expectations realistic. A normal circulated 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar is not automatically a rare or extremely valuable coin. Large numbers of modern half-dollars were produced, and ordinary circulated examples generally have modest collector value. However, the story can change if a coin has an important mint error, recognized variety, exceptional preservation, or another characteristic that creates strong collector demand. The exact coin matters much more than the date alone. This is especially important when you see sensational claims online. You may encounter headlines saying that a 1993 Kennedy half-dollar is worth thousands or even much more. Sometimes these stories are based on an exceptional specimen, a certified high-grade coin, or a rare error. That does not mean every 1993 D half-dollar has that value. Before believing a huge price claim, determine exactly what made the particular example valuable and compare its characteristics with your own coin. If you discover something unusual on your 1993 D half-dollar, take clear photographs of both sides. Start with full images of the obverse and reverse, then take close-up photographs of the date, D mint mark, rim, edge, and any suspected error. Try to use good lighting so the surfaces can be seen clearly. These photographs can make comparison with known examples much easier. If the feature appears significant, professional authentication and grading may be worth considering. Proper storage is another important part of collecting Kennedy half-dollars. Even modern coins can suffer additional damage when stored improperly. Avoid throwing potentially interesting coins loose into containers where they can rub against one another. Keep an unusual coin in an appropriate holder and protect it from excessive moisture, chemicals, and unnecessary handling. When examining the coin, hold it by the edges whenever possible so fingerprints and oils don't accumulate on the surfaces. Imagine finding this 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar inside an old collection. The coin has a circulated appearance, perhaps with darker areas and small contact marks from years of handling. You notice the date and then find the tiny D mint mark beneath Kennedy's portrait. You turn the coin over and begin studying the presidential seal. At first, it looks completely ordinary. But then you notice a feature that seems different, and suddenly that ordinary half-dollar becomes an exciting coin to investigate. That's the real beauty of coin collecting. You don't have to find a multimillion-dollar rarity every time you search. The excitement comes from learning how coins were produced, understanding their history, comparing conditions, and discovering characteristics that you may have overlooked before. A 1993 D. Kennedy half-dollar can be an excellent coin for learning about modern U.S. coinage, mint marks, grading, errors, and collecting. Even if your example turns out to be completely normal, the knowledge you gain from examining it is valuable. So if you have a 1993 D. Kennedy half-dollar in circulated condition, don't immediately spend it without giving it a proper inspection. Confirm the 1993 date, locate the D mint mark, examine Kennedy's portrait, study the presidential seal, inspect the rim and edge, and look carefully for genuine mint-made characteristics. Pay attention to the color and surfaces, but don't assume unusual coloration automatically means rarity. Most importantly, don't clean the coin before you know what you have. The 1993 D half-dollar is a fascinating representative of modern American coinage and the Kennedy half-dollar series. It carries the portrait of one of America's most famous presidents and represents a denomination that has become much less common in everyday commerce. Its circulated condition tells part of its journey, while its date and D-mint mark tell us where and when it was produced. Whether your example is common or contains an unusual characteristic, it can still be an interesting addition to a collection. So the next time you come across a 1993 D. Kennedy half-dollar, take a few extra seconds before putting it back into circulation. Look closely at the date, check that tiny D mint mark, study Kennedy's portrait, inspect the reverse eagle and presidential seal, and examine the surfaces under good lighting. Don't clean it, don't damage it while testing it, and don't believe extraordinary value claims without researching the exact coin. Your 1993 D half-dollar may be a normal circulated example, but the only way to know is to look closely. Keep searching, keep learning, and never underestimate the fascinating history hiding inside an American half-dollar. Coin number 2. The 1972 Kennedy half-dollar with the D-mint mark and a circulated appearance. At first glance, this coin might look like an ordinary piece of pocket change from more than 50 years ago, but there are plenty of details worth examining. The date, D-mint mark, condition, color, composition, surfaces, and possible varieties can all make a difference when you're trying to understand exactly what you have. So if you have a 1972 D. Kennedy half-dollar sitting in an old collection, jar, drawer, or box, don't overlook it. The Kennedy half-dollar has one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. The series began in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his assassination in November 1963. The coin quickly became an important part of American history, and Kennedy's portrait remained on the half-dollar. By 1972, the series had already gone through several major changes, including a transition away from the original 90% silver composition. That makes a 1972 D example particularly interesting for anyone studying the history of American circulating coins. The first thing you should check is the date. Make sure the coin clearly reads 1972. Because this example is circulated, the date may show some signs of wear, but it should remain identifiable. Once you've confirmed the year, look beneath Kennedy's portrait for the small D mint mark. That D indicates that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. The mint mark is an important identification feature because collectors often organize Kennedy half-dollars by date and mint location. Now let's talk about the circulated condition of the coin. A circulated 1972 D Kennedy half-dollar may have scratches, small contact marks, dull areas, and wear across the highest points of the design. Kennedy's hair and facial features can show softness, while the reverse presidential seal may also have lost some of its finer details. This kind of wear is completely normal for a coin that has been handled over many years. Condition is important, but circulation doesn't automatically make the coin uninteresting. The color of your 1972 D half-dollar can also be worth examining. Depending on how the coin was stored and handled, the surface may appear gray, darker, dull, or slightly toned. Environmental exposure can gradually change the appearance of a coin. Some pieces develop natural tunning, while others may show discoloration caused by storage conditions. However, unusual color should never be treated as proof of rarity by itself. A coin's date, mint mark, composition, condition, errors, and overall surface quality are much more important. One of the biggest mistakes collectors can make is cleaning an old coin. If your 1972 D. Kennedy half-dollar looks dirty or dark, you may be tempted to polish it to make it shine. Don't do it. Scrubbing can create tiny scratches across the surface, while chemical cleaners can permanently alter the coin's appearance. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces over coins that have been harshly cleaned. If the coin has an interesting appearance, preserve it exactly as you found it and investigate before making any changes. Now take a close look at the obverse. Kennedy's portrait should be examined carefully under good lighting. Look at his hair, forehead, cheek, neck, and the surrounding inscriptions. Examine the date and D-mint mark closely as well. Since this coin is circulated, some wear and contact marks should be expected. A magnifying glass can help you see small details, but remember that normal circulation damage can sometimes make ordinary features appear unusual. After examining the obverse, flip the coin over and study the reverse. The Kennedy half-dollar features the presidential seal, with an eagle at the center, a shield, arrows, olive branches, stars, and surrounding inscriptions. Take your time examining the feathers, shield, lettering, and rim. On a circulated example, some details may be worn, but the major design should remain clear. Look carefully for anything that appears different from a normal coin, but don't immediately assume every unusual mark is an error. The 1972 date is especially interesting because it falls during the early clad era of the Kennedy half-dollar. The original 1964 Kennedy half-dollar was struck in 90% silver, while later issues transitioned to reduced silver and eventually copper-nickel-clad compositions. By 1972, regular Kennedy half-dollars were being produced in the copper-nickel-clad format. This means a normal 1972 D half-dollar should not be treated as a traditional 90% silver Kennedy half-dollar. This distinction is important because many people see an older Kennedy half-dollar and immediately assume it contains a large amount of silver. That's not the case for every date. Knowing the composition of a particular issue is essential when determining its potential value. If you're researching a 1972 D example, don't rely on its age alone. Study the specific year and composition before making assumptions about its precious metal content. The D Mint mark also connects the coin to the Denver Mint, which has been one of America's major coin-producing facilities for generations. Millions of coins have been struck there, including Lincoln cents, Jefferson nickels, Washington quarters, and Kennedy half-dollars. For collectors, that tiny D is more than just a letter. It tells part of the coin's production story and allows you to distinguish a Denver issue from other mint issues of the same year. Another exciting possibility is the presence of a genuine mint error or variety. Collectors examine Kennedy half-dollars for characteristics such as significant double design elements, die breaks, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and other recognized mint-made abnormalities. If your 1972 D half-dollar has something unusual, don't immediately assume it's valuable. First, determine whether the feature could have been created during production at the mint. This is where understanding post-mint damage becomes extremely important. A scratch across Kennedy's face is usually damage. A deep dent along the rim may have occurred when the coin struck another object. A flattened portion of the design can be caused by circulation. Dark spots may come from environmental exposure. These characteristics can look very unusual, especially under magnification, but unusual does not automatically mean rare. Genuine errors need to be evaluated based on their physical characteristics and how the minting process works. You should also inspect the edge of the 1972 D half-dollar. Slowly look around the entire edge and check for unusual shapes, major damage, or characteristics that seem inconsistent with a normal coin. The edge can sometimes provide valuable clues when examining possible mint errors, but never cut, scratch, drill, or otherwise damage your coin to investigate it. If you think you've found something important, protect the coin and have it properly examined. When it comes to value, realistic expectations are extremely important. A normal circulated 1972 D Kennedy half-dollar is not automatically a rare fortune simply because it is more than 50 years old. Large numbers of these coins were produced, and ordinary circulated examples are available to collectors. However, a coin with a significant mint error, recognized variety, exceptional grade, or another unusual characteristic can be considerably more interesting. The exact characteristics of your individual coin are what matter. You should also be careful with sensational claims on social media and video platforms. You may see headlines claiming that a 1972 Kennedy half-dollar is worth thousands or even much more. Sometimes those claims involve a very unusual error, an exceptional certified specimen, or another special circumstance. That does not mean every 1972D half-dollar has the same value. Before believing a huge price claim, find out exactly what makes that particular example special. If you notice something unusual on your 1972D Kennedy half-dollar, take clear photographs of both sides. Start with full photographs, then capture close-ups of the date, mint mark, portrait, reverse, rim, edge, and suspected unusual feature. Good lighting is important because shadows can make ordinary marks look like errors. Clear photographs also make it easier to compare your coin with reliable references and known examples. If the coin appears to have a potentially significant error or variety, professional authentication and grading may be worth considering. A professional evaluation can help determine the coin's condition and whether the unusual characteristic is genuine. This is especially important if someone is claiming that your coin is worth a substantial amount of money. Don't rely solely on an online photograph or a quick social media opinion when a potentially valuable coin is involved. Proper storage is another important part of collecting. If your 1972D half-dollar is something you want to preserve, don't leave it loose with keys, tools, or other coins that could scratch it. Use a suitable holder and keep it away from excessive moisture and chemicals. When handling the coin, hold it by the edges rather than touching the main surfaces. Small habits like these can help protect the coin from additional damage. Imagine finding this 1972D Kennedy half-dollar in an old collection. It has a circulated appearance with some darker areas and contact marks. You see Kennedy's portrait and notice the tiny D mint mark. Then you turn the coin over and carefully examine the presidential seal. At first, it looks like an ordinary half-dollar, but as you inspect the details more closely, you notice something that makes you curious. That's the moment when an ordinary coin becomes a fascinating collecting mystery. That's the real excitement of coin collecting. You don't have to discover a spectacular rarity every time. Sometimes the enjoyment comes from learning the history behind a coin, understanding its composition, studying its design, and comparing it with other examples. A 1972D Kennedy half-dollar can be an excellent addition to a collection focused on dates and mint marks, and it can also help new collectors learn how to identify condition, damage, errors, and varieties. So if you have a 1972D Kennedy half-dollar in circulated condition, don't immediately spend it without giving it a proper inspection. Confirm the date, locate the D mint mark, study Kennedy's portrait, examine the presidential seal, inspect the edge, and look carefully for genuine mint-made characteristics. Pay attention to the coin's color and surfaces, but don't assume unusual coloration means rarity. Most importantly, don't clean or damage the coin while trying to investigate it. The 1972D Kennedy half-dollar represents an important chapter in the story of American coinage. It comes from a period when the Kennedy series had already moved away from its original 90% silver composition and into the clad era. It carries one of America's most famous presidential portraits and represents a denomination that became less common in everyday transactions. Its circulated condition may show evidence of its journey, making the coin an interesting piece of history even when it isn't a major rarity. Coin number 3. The 1985 P half-dollar with the P mint mark and a circulated condition. This is the kind of coin that can easily be overlooked because it isn't an extremely old date, but that's exactly why you should slow down and examine it carefully. The 1985 P Kennedy half-dollar has an interesting place in modern American coinage, and details such as its date, Philadelphia mint mark, condition, color, surfaces, and possible mint-made errors can all affect its collector interest. The Kennedy half-dollar itself has an incredible story. It was introduced in 1964, shortly after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and it quickly became one of the most recognizable American coins. The obverse carries Kennedy's portrait, while the reverse features the presidential seal. Over the years, the series changed in composition, production, and circulation patterns. By the time the 1985 P issue was produced, Kennedy half dollars were already more than 2 decades into their history, making this coin part of a fascinating modern chapter of American numismatics. The first thing you should do when examining this coin is confirm the date. Look closely at the numbers 1, 9, 8, and 5. Because your example is circulated, there may be small scratches, contact marks, or slight wear around the date, but the digits should remain recognizable. Once you've confirmed the year, look beneath Kennedy's portrait for the letter P. That P represents the Philadelphia Mint. This is important because the 1985 Kennedy half dollar was produced at different facilities, and the mint mark tells collectors exactly where a particular example was struck. Now let's focus on the circulated condition. A circulated 1985 P half dollar may show evidence of handling from years of contact with other coins and surfaces. You might notice small scratches, dull areas, contact marks, or wear on Kennedy's highest design points. The hair and facial features may have some softness, while details on the reverse can also show signs of circulation. Don't assume that these marks automatically make the coin worthless. Condition is simply one part of the coin's story, and collectors evaluate many characteristics before deciding how interesting a particular example may be. The color of your 1985 P half dollar can also be worth observing. Depending on its storage environment and exposure to air, moisture, and handling, the surface may appear gray, darker, dull, or slightly toned. Some coins can develop natural changes in appearance over many years, while others may have discoloration caused by environmental conditions. However, color alone does not make a coin rare. If your half dollar has an unusual appearance, treat it as a reason to investigate rather than assuming that the color itself creates a high value. One important rule should always be remembered when examining an older coin: don't clean it. If your 1985 P Kennedy half dollar looks dirty or dull, you might be tempted to polish the surface and make it shine. That can actually hurt the coin. Abrasive cleaning may leave microscopic scratches, while chemical cleaners can alter the surface and create unnatural coloration. Original surfaces are important to collectors, so if you find an interesting coin, preserve it exactly as you found it and investigate before doing anything. Now turn your attention to Kennedy's portrait on the obverse. Examine the hair, forehead, cheek, jaw, neck, and lettering. Use good lighting and slowly rotate the coin to see how the surface reacts to the light. Look closely at the date and P mint mark as well. A magnifying glass can help you inspect small details, but remember that circulation can make normal features appear unusual. Take your time and compare what you see with a normal 1985 P Kennedy half dollar before deciding that something is an error. After studying the obverse, flip the coin over and examine the reverse. The presidential seal is filled with details, including the eagle, shield, arrows, olive branches, stars, and inscriptions. On a circulated example, some of the smaller details may show wear, but the main design should remain clear. Look carefully at the eagle's feathers and the surrounding lettering. Also inspect the rim for dents, scratches, or unusual characteristics. The reverse can reveal both the amount of wear the coin has experienced and whether something deserves further research. The 1985 P issue belongs to the copper-nickel-clad era of Kennedy half dollars. This is an important distinction for anyone who finds an older-looking Kennedy half dollar and immediately assumes it contains silver. The famous 1964 Kennedy half dollar was made with 90% silver, while later issues changed composition. By 1985, regular circulating Kennedy half dollars were clad coins rather than the traditional 90% silver pieces. Understanding this history can prevent collectors from making incorrect assumptions about a coin's value. The Philadelphia Mint mark also makes this coin interesting for collectors who build date and mint collections. A complete Kennedy half dollar collection can include examples from different years and different U.S. mint facilities. The tiny P beneath Kennedy's portrait provides an important identification clue. When examining your coin, make sure that the P is actually present and not simply a mark caused by damage or surface wear. A clear mint mark can help confirm exactly which issue you have. One of the most exciting parts of searching any Kennedy half dollar is checking for possible errors and varieties. During the minting process, coins can occasionally develop unusual characteristics. Collectors may look for major off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die breaks, double design elements, broad strikes, and other recognized mint errors. If your 1985p coin looks different from a normal example, don't immediately assume that difference makes it valuable. First, determine whether the characteristic could realistically have occurred during production. Understanding post-mint damage is extremely important. A scratch running across Kennedy's portrait is normally just damage. A deep dent along the edge could have happened after the coin left the mint. A flattened portion of the design may have been caused by contact with another object. Dark stains can come from the environment. Even a strange-looking line may simply be a scratch. These features can look impressive under magnification, but a genuine mint error needs to be supported by characteristics that are consistent with the minting process. The edge of the 1985p half-dollar should also be inspected. Slowly examine the entire circumference and look for major abnormalities, unusual shapes, or damage. The edge can sometimes provide useful clues when investigating a possible error, but don't use a knife, file, or any other tool to test it. Cutting or scratching a coin can permanently damage it and destroy collector value. If something appears genuinely unusual, preserve the coin and seek a proper evaluation instead. When it comes to value, the 1985p Kennedy half-dollar should be approached with realistic expectations. A normal circulated example is not automatically a rare or extremely expensive coin. Millions of modern Kennedy half-dollars were produced, and ordinary circulated examples are generally accessible to collectors. However, a coin with a recognized error, unusual variety, exceptional preservation, or another desirable characteristic can attract more attention. The exact details of your coin are far more important than simply knowing that it is from 1985. This is especially important when watching viral coin videos or reading online claims. You may see a headline saying that a 1985 Kennedy half-dollar is worth thousands or even more. Sometimes these claims are based on exceptional examples, certified high-grade coins, or unusual errors. That doesn't mean every 1985p half-dollar has the same value. Always ask why the specific coin being discussed is valuable and whether your coin has exactly the same characteristics. If you find something unusual on your 1985p half-dollar, take clear photographs before doing anything else. Photograph both sides of the coin, then take close-ups of Kennedy's portrait, the date, the P mint mark, the reverse, the rim, and the edge. Try to photograph the coin under good lighting from several angles. This can make it easier to compare your coin with known examples and can help reveal whether an apparent error is actually a normal design feature or post-mint damage. If the coin appears to have a potentially significant error or variety, professional authentication and grading may be worthwhile. A professional evaluation can help determine the condition and authenticity of the coin and can be especially useful if someone claims it could be valuable. Instead of relying entirely on an online comment or a social media post, a professional opinion can provide much greater confidence about what you actually have. Proper storage is another important part of collecting. Even a modern Kennedy half-dollar can become more damaged if it is stored carelessly. Don't throw potentially interesting coins into a container with keys, tools, or other hard objects. Use a suitable coin holder if you want to preserve the coin. Keep it away from excessive moisture and chemicals and handle it by the edges whenever possible. Protecting the original surface is especially important if your coin turns out to have an interesting variety or error. Imagine finding this 1985p Kennedy half-dollar inside an old collection. It has a circulated appearance with some darker areas, light scratches, and contact marks. You notice the date, then spot the small P mint mark beneath Kennedy's portrait. You flip the coin over and begin studying the presidential seal. At first, it looks completely ordinary, but after examining it closely, you notice a feature that seems unusual. That simple moment of curiosity is exactly how many interesting coin discoveries begin. That's what makes coin collecting so enjoyable. You don't need to find a spectacular rarity every time you search. Sometimes the reward is learning something new about American history, minting technology, composition, or grading. The 1985p Kennedy half-dollar is a great example of a modern coin that can help collectors understand the transition of the series, the importance of mint marks, and the difference between ordinary circulation damage and genuine mint errors. So if you have a 1985 P. Kennedy half-dollar in circulated condition, give it a careful inspection before spending it. Confirm the 1985 date, locate the P. mint mark, study Kennedy's portrait, examine the presidential seal, inspect the rim and edge, and look carefully for genuine mint-made characteristics. Pay attention to the color and surface, but don't assume unusual coloration means rarity. Most importantly, don't clean or scratch the coin while trying to investigate it. The 1985 P. Kennedy half-dollar represents an important period in the story of American coinage. It carries the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, belongs to a famous U.S. half-dollar series, and comes from the clad era that followed the earlier silver issues. Even though a circulated example may not be a major rarity, it can still be an interesting piece of American history and a useful addition to a collection. And if your particular coin has an authentic error or unusual variety, its story could become even more interesting. So the next time you come across a 1985 P. Kennedy half-dollar, don't immediately toss it aside because it looks like an ordinary modern coin. Stop and check the date, find that tiny P mint mark, study Kennedy's portrait, examine the presidential seal, inspect the edge, and carefully look for anything that doesn't match a normal example. Don't clean it, don't damage it, and don't believe unbelievable value claims without researching the exact characteristics. Your 1985 P half-dollar may be a normal circulated coin, or it may contain something worth investigating. Keep searching, keep learning, and never underestimate the fascinating history hiding inside an American half-dollar.